Welcome to another special edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the tragic loss of Air India Flight 171. I'm Jeffrey Thomas and delighted to say, joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt, Germany. It's now good afternoon, Richard.
And definitely good evening, Jeffrey.
Indeed, it is evening. And sorry, viewers, we're a little bit late today, but this episode is facts and theories. What are the facts? What are the possible theories? What theories do not fit the facts? Then please discard those. What theories do fit the facts? Then please keep those. When you have discarded all the impossible theories, then what you are left with, no matter how improbable, is the truth. So now, viewers, who knows where that quote is from? So the viewers' comments and questions. Don Allen, 6396. It is a capital mistake to theorise before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's character, Sherlock Holmes. Until we have the data from the FDRs and the CVRs, any and all conjectures and hypotheses are suspect and break all the rules of proper investigative procedures. Thank you for that quote, Don. Richard quoted, "It is a capital mistake to theorise before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts." From Sherlock Holmes, A Scandal in Bohemia by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle in a paper titled The Final Resting Place of MH370, published on the 7th of March 2020. To continue the Sherlock Holmes theme, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. We are fitting theories to facts and disregarding theories that do not fit the facts. Our theories are scrutinised by over 30,000 viewers a day, sometimes 50 and 60,000 viewers a day. Today we're going to look at what viewers say about the facts and about the theories. We hope we'll soon have the FDR and CVR data. Meanwhile, we do have some facts. Meanwhile, there are many theories. Richard, what do you think about Don's comment?
Yeah, well, I love Sherlock Holmes, and that's obvious from the fact that I quoted him, or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, in a paper that I wrote. There is a difference between conjecture and hypothesis. In my view, hypotheses are essential to science. They drive new scientific discovery. So it's not aircraft accident investigation, but it's a more general scientific approach. Conjectures are more speculative, but they can be the starting point that leads to a testable hypothesis. Let me give you an example. Conjecture: is there life on Mars? That's pure conjecture. We don't know. But a hypothesis would be, if there is life on Mars, we should find evidence of methane. So, for example, that's exactly what NASA is doing. They have a Mars 2020 Perseverance rover that landed on Mars on the 18th of February 2021 in the Jezero crater. And on board is a scientific instrument called the Scanning Habitable Environments with Raman and Luminescence for Organics and Chemicals. And what do they call it for short? Sherlock. Yeah, you may laugh, but it's true. So Raman spectroscopy, I can't even say it, identifies molecular vibrations, and you can detect organics and distinguish it from minerals. And fluorescence spectroscopy, well, which I can't say, reveals compounds that glow under certain light. And there is a laser on board this rover for exciting molecules on rock surfaces, and there's a camera to take close-up images of the rock textures. And you won't believe it, the camera is called Watson.
No
And that
joke.
is no joke.
It seems as though the guys at NASA have got a good sense of humor, doesn't it?
It does indeed, yeah.
Yeah. So Spanner 4805, back to something serious. Film of AI 171 climbing out, taken from rear right, shows the landing gear remaining down. The landing gear doors closed, but with the wheel trucks oriented toe down. The orientation for landing and takeoff is heel down. That for landing gear retraction is toe down. Correct. Operating the gear up command invokes first the orientation, or the reorientation, I should say, of the trucks. Then 1 second later, the opening of the landing gear doors. Then 2 seconds later, the swinging up and in of the landing gear legs. So in the film, the first has happened, the second and third have not. So the failure occurred at that point. What does that imply?
Yeah, well, it's a very good observation. We've previously shown a YouTube video of the Boeing landing gear, and we're going to show it again. And we showed it, I think, on the 18th and 19th of June. But there's a link in this episode to the video, and this is a YouTube video, so you can download it and you can step through it frame by frame if you wish. And let's listen to another viewer's advice, Boris Medford 835. He says on a YouTube video showing the takeoff, stop it, click pointer on the picture to stop. Then you can type a period or a comma, and you can advance one frame with a forward with the period or one frame back with the comma. And then you can use the right and left cursor around the left and right cursor arrows, and you can move it 5 seconds forward or 5 seconds back. So I did that, and thank you for that advice. You can check it out yourself. The video shows at 7 seconds the wheels are pointing down and the gear lever is selected up. At 9 seconds, the wheels are moved to the level position and the landing gears doors are still shut. At 10 seconds, the wheels are pointing up and then the landing gear doors start to open. At 16 seconds, the wheels are pointing up and the landing gear doors are fully open. It then takes another 30 seconds, and at 40 seconds, 46 seconds into the video, the wheels are stowed, but the landing gear doors are still fully open, and they take another 5 seconds, and at 51 seconds, the wheels are stowed and the landing gear doors are shut. So the whole sequence takes 44 seconds, and the flight of India 171 from rotation to the crash took 32.61 seconds. And the start position is the wheels pointing down. We're showing a screenshot which was taken by a young guy called Farouk, and he posted it in Facebook. It's not exactly highly focused, but you can still see that the wheels are pointing down. And in my view, this means that the landing gear sequence had not started. And the reason for that, when the pilots are dealing with an emergency, the rule is aviate, navigate, and communicate. The gear lever being selected up is not a high item on the list when you have an emergency to deal with. And the implication is the emergency started before you would normally put the landing gear lever up. In other words, before the positive rate of climb had been established.
Yeah. Brian Abbott, 6585, Richard, he says, I've just discovered this channel a few days ago and I'm loving it.
Wow,
And
welcome
we
to the
love
channel and glad you're loving it.
and we love the comment. Thanks, Brian. David Harsat, 2261, or Harsant. Thanks, guys, for your direct, no nonsense analysis, mindful of the fact that the data available is not sufficient to give a definitive conclusion. As a high tech research engineer in a different field, it is great to see you taking a solid approach and being so thorough in the consideration of the possibilities. I agree with your comments regarding the appalling tardiness of the flight recording data by the Indian authorities and the lack of communication with respect to interim progress reports. It does lead one to wonder how much politics is in play.
Well, great comment, Dave. Thank you for that. We stick to the data which is available. It's not as much as we would like, but there's still quite a bit of data out there. And as more data becomes available, we'll be able to say more. And I hope more data will be made public soon.
Richard Causa, not sure how much we can take as fact from the sole survivor's statement. He just went through such a traumatic event, and crash survivors have been known to remember things that didn't happen or exaggerate things that did. That's a good comment. Only when we have more comprehensive factual information from the investigation, backed by evidence, can we start to compare his statements to see if they line up.
Yeah, it's a great comment, Causa, and thank you for that. I agree. Eyewitness accounts have in the past been shown to be at variance with the facts, and each of us can have a different perception of the facts. It is, however, in my view, nevertheless interesting to listen to eyewitnesses and see what aligns with the facts and the data and what does not.
Yeah. Bals, BALZZ 302. When the eyewitness said he could feel the thrust, I immediately reminded myself that when the plane is in the nose up position as it was, gravity sucks you back into the seat, mimicking the feel of acceleration. I have little doubt that he didn't feel thrust, but he felt the gravity as the plane rotated into an increasingly nose up position. And just me, HH4VP, similarly, rapid levelling off a climb can feel like falling. The fact that he reported feeling that the plane stood still just suggests gentle deceleration. And Andy Gomez, uniform Yankee Uniform 2 Delta X-ray, in reply to Aristi Cat, I understand if he had been knocked unconscious, but the fact was he was able to walk away immediately suggests otherwise. That being the case, I'd say his recollection of what happened in those moments is likely still quite clear.
Well, I think those are excellent examples of perception. And Papa Mike VC1QV reminded us in another comment the feeling of stopping in midair is not as wild as you think, he says. If you have ever been in a high speed elevator, as it slows its ascent to the top, it feels like it's stopped. The human body is a poor accelerometer. And without the elevator light clicking through the floor levels, most of us would have no idea what's going on and whether the car is still moving or not. And Andy, in his comment, goes on to relate a horrific story of how he was knocked unconscious one day and was still capable of getting up and carrying on with what he was doing, despite the fact he has absolutely no memory of getting up and returning to his seat and carrying on. And he woke up in front of his laptop and his head was bleeding.
Mm. John Rowe, 4907, Richard, he says, with reference to the lack of updates, especially when one considers previous accidents, investigations, and the best practice regarding updates, I think the fact that no other 787 has been grounded demonstrates that the cause was quickly determined. I understand no pertinent ADs have been issued. This takes me back to your smell a rat comment in an earlier bulletin.
Thank you, John. There was, in fact, one AD issued subsequently to the crash, and 3 days later, we've mentioned in a previous episode. But I think smelling a rat was just my perception. David Learmont, we quoted in a previous episode, he put it far more eloquently. He said, it's easy for authorities like the Indian Directorate General of Civil Aviation to believe they can justify withholding information on the ground that it is very complicated and they intend to release it quite soon anyway. Unfortunately for the DGCA, today's media environment does not have that kind of patience any longer, especially in a case like this. And thank you, David, for that quote. And perhaps I am being impatient, and perhaps there are no rats to smell.
I still smell a rat. Uh, and I should mention, or just a qualification there, regarding the AD that was issued. Richard mentioned the AD that was issued. That, in fact, followed up on a Boeing alert a year earlier. And so Boeing had been out there a year earlier saying when that was to do with the leaking toilet, was it not, Richard?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Andrea 007, one engine would have taken it into flight. I don't know if you've heard about the A321 that was unable to climb with one engine when departing Phoenix this late June. The pilot said it was because of the hot weather. Lucky for them, the engine was lost at 3,000 feet. The ADS-B data shows them losing altitude immediately afterwards and then going up and down for a while, long enough to trigger a low altitude alert. Now, there could have been some other issue with that aircraft that would cause it to barely be able to maintain level flight with one engine, but I'm pretty sure the weather too was an important factor.
Yeah, well, a very good point. And it will be interesting to see the exact thrust profile from both engines on the Air India flight when we get the FDR data. And I'm mindful of the captain and his Mayday call, thrust not achieved. It is a fact that air temperature affects the thrust produced by the engines. Warm air is less dense than cold air. Aircraft performance is degraded on hot days, and they have in the industry a condition known as hot and high, hot temperature and high altitude. Now, that means longer takeoff rolls, reduced climb rates, and sometimes payload restrictions are required. We know for a fact Ahmedabad Airport runway 23 is only between 180 and 189 feet above mean sea level, so it's not a high airport, but it certainly was a hot day. In episode 122, we called it hot and heavy, and we discussed the implications of the hot air temperature and the heavy takeoff weight, all within limits. But when other things go wrong, then it starts to make the situation much more difficult.
But it also begs the question, Richard, was the right takeoff weight put into the flight management computer.
Yeah. And was that all correctly calculated? The fuel weight, the cargo weight, the passenger weight, the carry-on luggage, the checked-in luggage. There are many factors to consider, and you have to get the sums right.
You do indeed. So just me, Hotel Hotel 4, Victor Papa, as long as the CCTV position and the point of the building are known and don't move, you can deduce some information from that video. I think the more pertinent point is how much can you attribute to factors involved in the crash versus small deflections from hand flying, crosswinds, etc. Good point.
Yeah, it is a good point, and that is why I showed in our analysis of the CCTV camera footage, the fixed point where the camera is, and I used a fixed point on the building as a reference. These 2 points do not move. The only thing that moves is the aircraft, and we had a fixed point on the tail of the aircraft. And we pointed out and discussed yesterday the issues of perspective and the issues of zoom and the relative time and the absolute time on the video. So, video analysis can be complicated, and we're still trying to align the video data with the ADS-B data, and that's even more complicated. We're trying to determine the speed of the aircraft along the runway from the frame by frame timing of the video data. We haven't finished that analysis yet. We're showing a screenshot of the camera which took the CCTV video. It's just sitting on a pole beside the airport perimeter. And so you can, on Google, look in and get quite close to the camera. There was a comment from a guy called at Clear Waters, which he included his video analysis, and it's worth taking a look. I don't agree quite with everything he says, but nevertheless, it's a very good analysis. The blue line he shows of the rotation start appears to be correct, and the liftoff point looks a little bit out, but and it doesn't quite match the ADS-B data, but nevertheless, an excellent video, and obviously one of our Spanish speaking listeners. And another viewer, Joan Taradella 6530, commented at length on this video analysis done by Clear Waters. And the bottom line is all this further supports the left engine flameout scenario and a degraded right engine. Let me just walk you through the key points from a very lengthy comment, and you can read it on the YouTube channel. Number one, brilliant analysis, Clear Waters. So thank you for that. Number two, in fact, the plane slides to the left. That day, there was a light wind coming from the west, so the wind is not responsible for that slide to the left on departure. Point three, the image suggests that the distance between the observed landing gear is pretty similar, left and right gear and nose gear. And she then plots out in detail the left main gear is 5.3 meters to the left of the center line of the aircraft, the right main gear 5.3 meters to the right, and the nose gear is 22.2 meters in front of that line. So she then forms a triangle, and the baseline is 10.6 meters, and the peak of that triangle is 22.2 meters long. So the observer is not directly behind the aircraft, and she works out the difference in the angle of 5.05 degrees to the right of the aircraft. And she works out we're 3.18 kilometers away and can analyze the visual distortion. And through all of that, it's a very clever analysis and calculations of the geometry of the perspective. She then lists the events of what happens when on a Boeing 787 when one engine fails on takeoff. And all I can say is muchas gracias, un excelente trabajo.
Yeah, obviously a great student of aviation.
Yeah.
Um, B. Harathis, 1772. Two reasons why this channel beats the rest. One, has a keen sense of discernment to ferret out the right technicalities. That two, bubbled up by viewers for a dissective rerun of festering unsolved theories floating on media. And two, it absolutely requires the balls to tackle brutal criticism in the comments section with an ego less calm rather than safely play out a monologue of choice like other channels. Kudos, Jeffrey and Richard.
It's a very kind comment. And we will continue dissecting the theories. And even if some people don't like it when we ruin their pet theory, but we could be wrong. So it is great when people do their own analysis. And we just showed an example of one viewer's analysis followed by another viewer's analysis. And we may disagree on exactly what the point of liftoff was, but we agree on the outcome: left engine flame out and a degraded right engine. So let's keep those analyses coming and keep the debate and discussion going.
And on that theme, Senior Swifty, I appreciate Richard's open-mindedness to viewer comments. He reflects and considers the proposed theories. This is an important quality for all scientific investigators.
Yeah, but we also publish the comments from people that disagree with us, and we see it as all part of the process.
Mark RW3KW. Just because an engine could be heard at various power levels doesn't mean it was operating properly. I'm not convinced that the problem is that either of the engines completely shut down at any time. From eyewitness reports and tracking the flight path, it appears that the engine thrust, one or both engines, was intermittent or seriously degraded, but not a complete engine failure, or not an airplane system turning off the engine completely. Perhaps the automated engine control systems introduced intermittent thrust instructions to the engine, or perhaps it could be something like a fuel problem that might degrade the engines but not completely shut them down, or some other reason why the engines operated intermittently. The reason why the fuel theory needs to be examined is that it is virtually impossible that both engines failed or degraded on their own, absent some external problem, such a bird strike, of which there is no evidence to support that, such as smoke or flames from the engines. So if it wasn't the fuel, then some automated system control of the engine was defective. But that seems somewhat unlikely that a system failure would introduce intermittent engine thrust. Rather, it would more likely cause complete engine shutdown, which apparently did not happen on both engines. Interesting.
Yeah, well, that's a very excellent analysis again, and I completely agree. It is not obvious that this was a bird strike like USA Flight 1549 from LaGuardia, um, or fuel contamination like JST 15, a Boeing 787-8 from Cairns, or a ground handling issue like the Qantas VHZNJ, a Boeing 7879 from Melbourne, or a FADEC dual engine protection shutdown like ANA 985, a Boeing 787-8 from Tokyo. It could be any of those or a combination of two or more issues.
Mm. Our dear friend, imperfect stranger, how do we simulate the failure if we don't know what it was? And then Callaway 5148 in reply to Imperfect Stranger, I believe the idea of the comment is to try simulating different theories of the cause in order to see which produces the same outcome: altitude, speed, crash distance from the runway, etc. Imperfect Stranger in reply to Callaway 5148, good point, but we don't really have enough solid data. I don't think we've ever agreed or even agreed on the visible data yet. E.g., Richard said the max height of the aircraft was about 1.5 wingspans, and that correlated with his ADS-B data. I say the tail cone, using that as a reference because that was found stuck in the building, has no more than one wingspan above the ground at the airport boundary. Check for yourself and see if you agree.
Well, in fact, I've had numerous calculations from various people on the altitude above ground level and the airspeed reached during the initial climb of Flight 171. The altitude calculations range from 71 feet above ground level to 455 feet above ground level. And the airspeed calculations range from 159 knots to 198 knots. The FDR will tell us exactly what altitude the aircraft believed it reached after takeoff and exactly what airspeed it reached. Meanwhile, I am using a maximum altitude of 312.5 feet, but plus or minus about 100 feet, and a true airspeed of 177 knots, plus or minus 3 knots. This is just a working assumption.
Aristicat, if there was intermittency that suggests a fuel flow problem more than an electrical problem, no matter how well the FADECs were working along with the rest of the fly-by-wire system, starving of fuel will create intermittent and or fading engine power.
That's a very good point. And it could be a fuel flow issue, and it could be an electrical problem, and it could be a combination of the two together. And lo and behold, Aristicat, the next episode is going to be on fuel and electrics. And if you want to do your own analysis beforehand, here are three schematics from the Boeing 787 to set you off. The first one is of the fuel tanks. So we're showing a screenshot of the fuel tanks on the Boeing 787. You can see there's a very large center tank and two wing tanks left and right. And they will be filled with the required amount of fuel for the particular journey, with some fuel in reserve. And they will also make sure that the aircraft weight and balance is maintained around the center of gravity. So they won't put all the fuel on one side or the other. They will even it out. The next screenshot is of the fuel system on the 787. And that shows there are shutoff valves, fuel pumps, a fuel heat exchanger, a fuel filter. There's a fuel metering valve to measure the flow rate. And there's a fuel splitting valve to then spread out the fuel as it is injected into the jet engine. And this schematic is for the same type of engine on the crash aircraft, it is the GE NX-1B engine. And finally, we're showing a screenshot of the electrical system from the Boeing 787. And that shows the generators in each engine and in the APU, shows the distribution systems throughout the aircraft to the various systems in the forward and the aft electronic bays. The AC 115 volt is converted to DC 28 volt, and there are various DC backup batteries, and the whole system is quite complex. So these two systems, the fuel system and the electrical system, are going to be the focus of the next episode.
Looking forward to that, Richard. And that will be tomorrow, will it not?
Now, I think Saturday. I
Saturday.
think tomorrow would be too soon to for everyone to be able to do who wants to do their homework,
All
including
right.
me.
And so in that case, we may be back tomorrow with questions, depending on some of the dynamics of what's going on and if there's any breaking news. We'll see how we travel on that one.
Yeah.
So viewers, thank you very much indeed for watching. Please subscribe to us if you're not subscribing. Please like us. Please keep those wonderful comments coming. We really do appreciate the comments, the support. And of course, keep those fabulous questions coming. There's some fantastic debates going on between a lot of people who know an awful lot about aviation, and we're learning something ourselves. So thank you very much. And Richard, thank you for all the work you've done on this. It's absolutely fabulous. And so we'll see everybody possibly tomorrow.
And you're very welcome.
Thank you.